heard of the golden horn of plenty, traditional symbol of prosperity and of good things bestowed upon mankind? Well, these are the wheels which carry the horn of plenty, wheels which take it to the places where the good things abound and bring it back full and overflowing.
Really, I think we owe so much to Nan Boynton, because it was her vision, and it really has, to me, for me, the Railroad Square is the focal point of the artist community in Tallahassee, and 621 is kind of the showcase. And I met my husband on the board too, so it's been pretty important.
But you know, 621 is a part of this whole larger phenomenon that Railroad Square is. And, you know, the two are inseparable at this point. Mm-hmm. But, I mean, 621 never would have evolved unless there was this kind of a special community within Railroad Square. And, of course, the vision of Nan.
Yes.
Because a lot of people wouldn't have you know, thought that this was an important aspect of things. But really, from a business aspect, from a business standpoint, I think she really prospered from her decision in the end to kind of follow that direction.
Well, Nan Boynton is the owner of Railroad Square, and she was a maverick. You know, she found early on that the arts was her passion. Even though she wasn't an artist herself, she loved being around artists. And she had one of her first artists was Leo McMullen, was a tenant here, and she went, that's a good idea, because she was just running this industrial park for her dad, and she was like, I don't know. And then somehow got the FSU art department involved for their BFA and MFA studios.
She thought, well, if I could just make it an art community, it could be something more than just a bunch of warehouses. It had been really neglected. It was pretty run down. The problem was that its heyday was back in the 30s, when the 621 building was a sawmill, and the railroad spur came in here and they were loading lumber, and that was back in the 30s. So then when she inherited it, it was like just people doing storage and a few things like that. There were some buildings, I think the House of Plywood was a going concern then. It's kind of weird now, but it was really busy then. There was an electric company where the GE had an electric supply place up near the front, but there weren't very many businesses. There were just empty spaces, and so she started dividing them up and renting to artists. The problem is the artists needed a place to show, and they started getting together and having having a good time together, and they said, well, let's have some shows. So Nan Boynton would always have someplace empty. I mean, you know, she would always have a space that she couldn't rent. And one of the hardest places to rent was the space where 621 is now. She just couldn't rent it. It was empty a lot. So the artist in the park said, well, let's have some shows there. Problem is the walls were awful, in and out. The lighting was terrible, and there were no facilities. I mean, the bathroom was like derelict and things like that. So it was all volunteer help that it just started working on it.
She pretty much donated the space to artists to take it on as they wanted to produce shows. It was kind of like, here's a space, you want to do something, go ahead. But then finally, about the time that I started working with her was when she realized that it needed to be an actual business entity, and she did contacted a lawyer, did all the legal documents to get it formed as an organization, and also kept donating the space, and for many years donated I think it was $500 a month to the director's salary, and that was what 621 operated on for a while, until it had other members and other donations and fundraisers. But that was she loved the openings. She just thought that 621 was the best thing that she had ever created, I think.
Well, it makes me feel proud because I feel like I was a part of it. I mean, personally, I've seen it go from a space that was, just a space that was just used occasionally to a fledgling gallery that was just trying to support itself and to work on people's donations. And I never got paid anything. I know that directors get paid now, which is wonderful. They should be paid. That way, but I saw it go from nothing to become a First Friday event that is just overwhelming. With the number of people that come and participate and actually are involved in the gallery and in Railroad Square as an art happening place. And I think that's unique to Tallahassee and to most cities, especially in the South. Most cities don't have a place like this. And
621 was part of a before 621 really started, there were a bunch of artists, like a colony, serious things.
It wasn't, the 621 gallery wasn't a gallery at that time. It was Rick Batten had sort of taken it over. He lived at the park, and he asked Nan Boynton if he could utilize a space for performances and readings, poetry readings and things like that on the weekends. So it wasn't really a gallery space.
I was basically the first director of the 621. And I can tell you that the first show in the 621 gallery happened in May of 2083. That was when the first show occurred, and it was a show that was organized.
1983, right?
What did I say? Did I say like 1883? No, 1983.
Okay, thank you.
1983, and it took place in conjunction with an activity that Nan used to put together, which was the Mayfair, and it was kind of an open house for everything that was going on in the industrial park at the time. And there were a lot of interesting businesses there, as well as a lot of different artists working there. But the thing that really wasn't going on was a venue for the display of art from inside the industrial park. And actually, there was a graduate student whose name I wish I could remember, but for his exit show, he did a show in that space, because it used to be the distribution point for Royal Crown Cola, right? They stored all their inventory in there. Anyway, sometime I guess when they leave, I don't know. His show was something like April, March, something like that, and he had this show. It was his exit show, and he used that space. So some of us got this idea that it'd be nice to organize this show of artists within the park. And so we went and asked Nan if we could use this space for this reason. And she thought about it, and she said, okay. So we got in there with a lot of the people that were in the park at the time. And I mean, it was terrible, terrible place. It was full of trash, and walls were full of holes and things like that. But it was a community effort to patch up holes in the walls. Dan paid for the paint, painted it white, gray floors, Ken Beati, do you know him?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, he provided all of the lighting for the original show in the form of various stage and theatrical lighting. And so we did that in conjunction with the Mayfair. There was like 28 different artists from the park. and kind of surprised everybody how much was actually going on with the artists there. So that happened. It was very successful. Show was up for, I don't know, a couple of weeks. And then it came down. And then in June, Nan called me up to her office, and she said, okay, I really liked that. It was a good thing. And how would you like to continue? I'll give you 6 months to see what can happen. And that was kind of where it all started.
My husband, Charles Hook, who was head of sculpture, he and David Crook formed the sculpture club, FSU Sculpture Club, and they had asked Nan if they could turn the space into a gallery and that could be used. And they were the ones that hung the lights and planted the palm trees. David Crook did that, and they painted the walls and they made it a space that it was usable. And
he's the person that kind of brought it to the next level, right? Because about that time, we kind of established a bit of a track record. And he came along, and he was associated with the university, and he got a lot of the students involved. And so picked up a whole new dimension of momentum. And so he was a very important aspect to the actual, he was more involved in the transition of it being just kind of a wild and loose cannon sort of thing into a more organized situation. And somewhere in there, we incorporated. And Charles and David and I signed the original incorporation papers for the 621. I think Hook was the president, and I was something like the treasurer or the secretary, something. I don't remember what it was. We just signed the paperwork and it was over. So then, Crook took off on a whole new track, and there were more shows and better organization.
Wow, yes. Well, okay, so we had this space, we had lighting, which albeit temporary. Of course, now we have track lighting, which is really nice. You can't imagine what it was like trying to set a show with those clip-ons. But there was no office. And there was no center wall. So it was just this big barn-like space. And the sound would just go up into the rafters, and it was just cold. And so anyway, we put in the center wall. I think Mark Messersmith and I did most of that. But we still didn't have an office. When Vic Swan was director, all he had was a little table. It was like a school table. This is Vic Swan, 621 Gallery. And he was one of the first directors. And he had this little table, and it had a drawer in it. That was it. That was the office. It was pretty bad. When it first started, it was just for Railroad Square. And Railroad Square artists and community people would come to the park. But after a while, once we incorporated it and we had a board of directors, we realized that it was not a Railroad Square gallery, it was a community gallery. And we started soliciting memberships from all over the community. And the shows came from the local community and from outside too. So that was just part of the expansion back in the 80s. It was not, one of the things we were really worried about in those days was making it a vanity gallery where people would pay and have shows and would congratulate themselves. We wanted it to be a community thing and open to everyone.
Excuse me?
How do you feel
Yeah.
that 621 influenced Tallahassee as a community?
Oh, tremendously, tremendously. The beginning was hard. You had mostly were the artists from FSU, FAMU, and TCC. I don't even know. There were no even art department at TCC, because later on I started to teach at TCC. And well, anyway, they were very few, but the population was not aware very much Slowly, gradually, they were the friend of the artist and friend of the friend who came. Now you can have, I think, from what I heard, 5,000 people coming in one night. Well, to me, it's a big deal. Big deal.
I think 621 influenced Tallahassee in that it really provided a venue that was non-traditional. It was contemporary, and it allowed people to be extremely experimental when it just wasn't done in a regular gallery. So it was a nice offset to Lemoyne, and it was very much connected to Florida State and the graduates of Florida State, not only the MFA but also the BFA. So it was highly influential in terms of the student population. And another thing that it provided, just as a subset, was that it really was a community of artists, which is, you know, where we're at right now. So it was kind of the birthing place of that sense that art isn't made in a vacuum, alone in your studio, that it is a process of interaction with people of like minds, or even opposite minds, if you will, but certainly having the same goal of providing that sense of community to various peoples and a subculture, if you will. Some of the best things that we did was through the Iron Pours with Charles Hook and Rick Patton. And it would be a weekend event. We would start on the weekdays, you know, busting up iron and then setting up the furnace and going to all the places and getting free food, free iron. I mean, that in and of itself. But anything free that we could do. And the pig roasts were awesome. I mean, we'd dig a pit and, you know, have it cooking all weekend, and we would serve it. I mean, it would be free. Nobody paid for anything. So it was really a nice party. And that's one thing that I do miss now. So, but it was all the beginning. It definitely proliferated ideas.
When it first started, it was just for Railroad Square, and Railroad Square artists and community people would come to the park. But after a while, once we incorporated it and we had a board of directors, we realized that it was not a Railroad Square gallery, it was a community gallery. And we started soliciting memberships from all over the community. And the shows came from the local community and from outside too. So that was just part of the expansion back in the 80s. It was not, one of the things we were really worried about in those days was making it a vanity gallery where people would pay and have shows and would congratulate themselves. We wanted it to be a community thing and open to everyone.
The difference is that 85, 86, we were working for our own pleasure because it was a call to do it. You were a painter or sculptor or a photographer, and you did it because it was a passion. You know, maybe people were...
You know, and that's what also has been